How's it going, gang? It's the final render here, and welcome to another exciting Fallout 76 news video. We've got some really cool news today because just yesterday, the Fallout 76 public test server got its first iteration of the Fallout shelters, which is promising to revolutionize camp building for all of us dedicated camp builders. And these Fallout shelters, which we can build in our camp, are going to revolutionize building by giving you an instanced building area with much less restrictions. So people are really excited about it, and it is now in the public test server. But before we get into talking about the shelters themselves, two things to note with this video. One, I have a bit of a cold, so I apologise if I sound a little bit different. And two, this is stuff from the public test server. So if you are someone who doesn't necessarily want spoilers about stuff coming to the game in the future, then please consider watching a different final render video, because we are going to be discussing some very minor spoilers throughout this video. And also, just for clarification, if you want to get into the public test server, you must own the game on the Bethesda.net version of the game on PC. But with all that being said, let's start talking about camp shelters. So when the camp shelters are released into the game, you can go to the very far end of your camp system and you will find some brand new interesting shelters, which are underground little compounds that you can place inside your camp, which give you an instanced build area. And currently in the public test server, we have 3 different kinds of vault themed shelters, which we have got to test out. And so far we have got the vault atrium, the vault lobby, and the vault utility room. These rooms all vary in size and style, but the main premise of all of these rooms is that this is your little portal room to where you can build much more freely than you could in the camp system. To start off with, when you are building inside an instant shelter, you have approximately 150% of the budget you would of a camp system, meaning you can build an extra 50% of stuff, which is absolutely fantastic. And there are also some really cool things to do with camp building, which you guys are going to love. Primarily, toggleable snapping is now a thing, so you don't actually need to snap items together, which makes building some complex structures really easy, and you can start to really play with the system and make some really cool designs. But also, collision is turned off inside these shelters, which means you can actually have items floating in the air, which means you can start to make some really interesting designs which don't actually have to be anchored to the ground. It means you can start to use pieces in ways which you have never ever used them. Such as, you can actually take these stairs for example, and since you can turn off the snapping and you have no collision, you can actually place stairs against the side of a wall, something you've never been able to do in the camp system, and it is so incredibly easy here. I must say, the amount of people complaining about the fact that items are floating in the public test servers forums is a little bit embarrassing, but being able to have items float in the air means you can actually build much more interesting structures than you ever could when you were building things in the camp system. And it's something which builders of Fallout 4 on PC in particular will definitely be able to tell you is a huge way to help make your building a lot easier in the long run. And it's only going to be possible inside these instance areas. So that's the main premise of the camp shelters, kind of summarised quite easily. But what are some of the kind of finer quirks about the camp shelters that you guys might want to know about? Well, for a start, you can have one type of camp shelter each inside of your camp, so you can have different variants of shelters each time, and also each shelter has its own and completely unique budget, which means you can fully max out one shelter and then build a different type of shelter and completely max out that budget. It's a really cool thing. It means you can have different designs and different shelters for different themes, etc. Another cool thing about the camp shelters is that you can actually place camp shelters inside your camp shelters. Because yo dog, I heard you like camp shelters. Also with these camp shelters, it is true that there's only 3 types right now, all of which are vault themed. However, we're pretty certain that there are definitely going to be other types of shelters being added to the game with different styles and different themes. So if Vault Deck isn't your ideal theme, there's almost certainly going to be some more in the future. Another thing which you'll probably need to know about shelters is that they're not all necessarily going to be free for all players. Once shelters have been added to the live game, all players will be able to unlock the Vault Utility Room by completing a very brief quest called Home Expansion. However, the Vault Lobby will be initially free for the Fallout First members, and then the Vault Atrium, the biggest of all of the shelters so far, will be purchasable through the Atomic Store. Now, I know some people aren't going to be too happy about that, but the simple fact of the matter is, this is a little bit of custom DLC, and that's just the way it goes for a lot of camp building stuff. And chances are, there'll be plenty of options for you to choose from, so you don't necessarily have to buy all of the ones you want, just the ones you like. And also, if I'm 100% honest, the free one, which comes available to all players, which is the Vault Utility Room, is probably the smallest and actually my favourite so far, so I actually think that's the best one. So how does it feel to build in these shelters, and is it actually something that you guys should definitely be excited about? Well, firstly I can say, as an experienced builder of camp systems and Fallout 4 settlement system, I can say this is genuinely a really, really cool system with so much potential. It's really cool that we can toggle off the snapping, which has been such a bane of camp builders' existence since the game came out, and actually being able to have no collision and have objects floated means we can build far more complex structures with so much ease. And because also it's an instanced area, meaning only you are going to be there, it means essentially that you can have much more budget, which is definitely a good thing. Now, that's not all to say that you have to be in there by yourself. Other players can choose to enter your instance if you want to, and yes, you can lock your shelter if you want to. However, if another player decides to pick that lock and come in anyway, that player will be wanted, and PvP does still stand here. So you will have a wanted person inside your camp. A very nice thing that has been added to these shelters is we do have a little workshop box. And this is a box that is very similar to our camp system, or the workshops that we can find in the settlements inside 76, to where we can go up to it and we can build stuff, and we can also press a button to auto repair all of our items. Except now, there is an extra functionality with it, to where we can hit a button and automatically scrap everything inside our shelter. This is a really nice way to very quickly and easily start with a fresh slate with your shelter, and I think it's a great idea. In fact, I would say we should do it in the camp system, but I guarantee people would accidentally scrap their camps, and then tears would ensue. But of course, this is Fallout 76's public test server, where we actually get to trial and stress test a lot of this new stuff. So what's actually in the shelters that needs some improvement, or is something that I'm personally not too keen on? Because there is definitely a big list of things which I personally think need to change or could be improved with the Fallout shelters. For example, number 1, there is definitely a problem with at least these Vault-Tec themed ones, to where you can't actually place walls right on the very edge of the structures. You can kind of manually place some walls against the structures to kind of squeeze it in as much as possible, but there is this definite boundary mark to where they don't necessarily want you to build walls anymore, which means kind of building big structures is a little bit confined in a way. You'll always have kind of a building inside a room, which looks a little bit weird. It's fine if you're building a big town, shanty town for example, but if you want to make like a nice modern day room, then unfortunately, that's a bit strange that you can't build so close to the walls. Another issue I have with the camp shelters is to do with power and electricity. Quite simply, we need to power our electrical items the same as we normally would inside the camp system. However, looking around the vault atrium, there is definitely lights on in here. There is definitely electricity in here. Yet we still need to cover our entire camp, or entire shelter in this case, with wires and conduits and stuff like that. Can't we just get rid of the electricity inside the Vault-Tec ones at least? We already know that there is power running through all of the walls, like with the Vault-Tec stuff from Fallout 4, so maybe we could just not have the power electrical stuff like that inside at least the Vault-Tec themed ones. That would definitely be a nice incentive to get the Vault-Tec stuff rather than maybe any other shelters, to where you may actually have to do your own wiring. Another major issue with the shelters that we have definitely seen so far is that for some reason there are no display cases enabled. In fact, there are a lot of things that are currently not enabled to be placed down inside the shelters. For example, you are not able to place down display cases, you're not able to place down vendors, and you're not able to place down allies. And also, something very, very perplexing is that you are able to place down the farmable dirt tiles inside your shelters, but you can't actually place food down. You can't put any food, and you can't put anything to do with water inside here. Which is very frustrating, because not only have we got the tiles to where we can plant plants, but not only that, but the fact that display cases can't be added is very, very strange. Because display cases is one of the coolest things that was added to the game, and it took Bethesda months and months to actually get the display cases into the game, working and safe. And now we actually have a place to where we can really display all of our really cool stuff in a really cool way with loads of budget. and we're not allowed to actually place them. I'm sure it's a technical reason, but please, Bethesda, can you find a way around this? There are some other kind of quirkier issues which we have in the camp system which actually come into the shelters system. For example, we can only have 50 lights in our camp, and that's fine for a camp, but considering we have an extra half or sometimes even more than that of budget inside these giant shelters, we actually need a lot more lights inside these instance areas. Could we please make it so that some of the item limits, the actual count on how many of those items you can place inside a shelter, is removed or at least increased? It just seems a bit strange to be given such an enormous area and not actually be able to have those limits removed. And another issue that we currently have with the public test server, which shows for shelters, is that we can't actually place any atomic shop items down. And this has always been the case with the public test server. However, it's a problem here because we really need to test a lot of these items that are inside the atomic store to see if they actually function in the shelters. Not only that, but it means we, for example, can't test any wallpapers. There's no wallpapers available inside the public test server to test with, and we don't even know if they function. Not only that, but there are also some big issues to do with some of the decoration as a whole. For example, most of the Vault atriums that we can get as our shelters are covered with this kind of blue flooring. However, we can't just swap this out to be a different material for a floor texture. And to tell you the truth, I really don't like the blue that much. I'd really like to actually use some of the cool atomic shop floors, which I have got, and just swap the materials over for those. That way, I can actually build something that I want, rather than working within the restrictions of Vault-Tec's colour scheme. One issue which has been in the game for quite a long time has definitely been amplified here, and has been the bane of many camp builders' existence since we found out about this issue. And that is that for some reason, when you place items which actually have a roof above them, they will snap to the roof of that surface. We've seen it many times in the camp system. However, one of the first things I wanted to try out with these shelters, since we actually have no more collision, was trying to stack shelves in a very natural and conventional way. However, when you place items upon shelves, they will often zoom up to the next level of the shelf or to the very top level of the shelf. This is that exact same glitch of items appearing on your camp's roof when you are building with a roof over your head. Now that we have seen this in the shelters, could we please find out what's going on with this issue and try to find a way to get around it? Because one of the coolest things about having no collision would be that just normal people, without using glitches and tricks, some people don't like to do that in the camp system, could have built shelves and stuff in their shelters. But this issue is persistent still, and it would be really nice to actually find a way around that. But not only that, but seeing as these are all flat surfaces, we can't even use the earth merging glitch to actually make shelves in the way we would in the camp system. So it would be really nice if we could find a solution to this problem. Now its problems have been amplified even more so. Another thing is that blueprints for some reason are not actually allowed inside the shelters. Now the blueprint system I don't use too much, I must admit. However, I do have some really nice pre-made decorations that I've done and used in many builds which are blueprinted that I will use many times. So it would be really nice if we could find a way to get the blueprint system working again. I can only assume it's so that you can't blueprint stuff from the camp system and then bring it into the shelters where it may not be allowed, such as using food items for example. But either way, it would be really nice if we could find a way to get blueprints in here. That would be fantastic. And now one final problem with the public test server's version of the shelters is definitely the biggest problem, which needs to be addressed pretty darn quickly. And that is the potential for griefing with these shelters. The griefing potential with these shelters is absolutely immense, because in these shelters, you can quite happily place down traps, turrets, flamethrowers, everything like that as much as you would, same as your camp system. However, when it comes to the shelters, there is a guaranteed spot to where you definitely know someone is going to be when they enter your shelter, right on the spawn point at the main entrance. So what people have been doing in the public test server is putting down pressure pads on that point, which immediately trigger flamethrowers and all kinds of other traps like Tesla arcs and radiation mines, and then these will instantly kill the player who enters your camp. This is an enormous problem, because if people can be killed just for stepping into someone's camp, not even interacting with the player in any meaningful way at all, then their junk is then vulnerable to being stolen, and there is literally nothing stopping people from doing this. As I mentioned earlier, it is possible to lock your own camp. However, personally, I would like to see a system to where, when it comes to entering shelters, you can enter shelters in the same way you enter private worlds, which is a system to where only people who are in your team or who are on your friends list can enter your shelters. I personally feel as if this needs to be added to the shelters just for the sake of safety. Not only that, but also for the sake of privacy. Some people do like to play 76 solo and they don't want to be disturbed at all. And now they finally have a camp where they can build and where they can actually be guaranteed not being disturbed. However, they can't actually because someone can just come in. But also, if this restriction was in place, it would mean that you would never be able to troll and maim unwitting players. Personally, I think it is a bit of a shame that this couldn't be there at the start, but I personally think this is something where Bethesda need to listen to the fans and actually acknowledge that people don't necessarily want to be killed the second they enter an instanced area. Because that, my friend, is not PvP. That is PKP. Player kills player. So that's kind of all of my issues with the camp shelter system. But all that being said, I must say, guys, this new system is absolutely brilliant. And I am really, really looking forward to seeing what happens to it with the future upcoming developments of this. Because whilst there is a lot of issues with it, this is the first iteration of it without any kind of new feedback squeezed in there. I will say that the new extra budget we have is genuinely enormous. And not only that, but seeing as you're in an instanced area, you don't need to fill your place with missile turrets and stuff like that. Yes, I'm looking at you, wooden box camp. You don't need your missile turrets in here. And you'll actually be able to get a huge amount of budget to actually build far bigger things than you ever have inside Fallout 76 before. And it is brilliant. The amount of freedom you have to build unusual things is brilliant. There's also going to be a much bigger skill gap with building stuff. For example, seeing as you can turn off the snapping in order to build some unusual things, being able to line up objects and place them down in the perfect position is now more important than ever. So if you actually practice this and you plan how something wants to look, you can make some things that are really, really impressive. But with that extra freedom comes a little bit more skill, of course, which I actually think is a very cool and welcomed addition to it. But I do feel overall that the camp shelters need to have a bit more functionality, because right now it is just a little box of toys to where you can build something pretty and decorate with it. However, I do think we need to be able to have planters in there. Maybe we have to build some UV lamps or something to get plants to grow, I don't know. I think we need to be able to get running water in there, even if it's just for the sake of using sinks. And I also personally think we definitely need to get allies and display cases in there. But overall, I think the shelters is going to be fantastic, and I really, really can't wait to see what you guys can build when they come out towards the end of the year. So thank you very much for watching this video, people. This has been a really good look at the public test servers variant of the shelters, and I hope you guys are looking forward to seeing more of it. If you own the game on Bethesda.net on PC, you can jump into the public test server and give them a try yourself. And Bethesda really want people to properly stress test these. They want people to build as much as possible, and if you build a large amount, I believe you can actually get awarded a special pennant in-game to show that you helped out with the public test server. So get on the public test server and help out. And also, guys, remember to check out all the cool Patreon people in the description below who help support the channel with their financial donations. You yourself, of course, can also do the same. And I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye, gang. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.